Every time I sit down, I feel like I'm on one of those reality TV interviews. Getting ready to tell my story. And I am. So, transparency, story time. We're drinking coffee, kind of like a dirty chai. Yeah, kind of like a dirty chai. But anyway, so so this is about like my herbal journey protocol. 2 years ago in December, I went for a normal eye doctor appointment, and so he was like, your optic nerves look a little swollen. And I'm like, what does that mean? So, he double checked, and he was like, when this happens, we treat it like an emergency, and you need to go to the hospital, like right now, the emergency room. So I'm freaking out, I'm panicking, I'm calling my mama. I started crying. It was a lot. And he said because it could be like a tumor or something like that. But he said what he thinks it is IIH, idiopathic intracranial hypertension. That's what he thought it was, but you got to treat it like an emergency, because if it's not that, it could be a tumor. So anyway, go to the hospital, confused all day there. They did some CT scans. They did the blood work. They did all these things, ran these tests, checked like neuro things. I had to make sure I can do all those things. And so I ended up having to stay overnight because they wanted to do a spinal tap. And so they did that. The pressure was high. My I don't know. Yeah, the pressure, the reason that I was there, it was high. And so doing the spinal tap releases some of the pressure, the optic nerve pressure. And so it turns out it was the idiopathic intracranial hypertension thing. And what that basically means is kind of like your body acts like you have a tumor, and so you start producing more cerebral spinal fluid. I'm not a doctor, but this is what I remember of the diagnosis. And so they don't know what causes it, which is why they call it idiopathic. But they do see it typically in obese women of childbearing age, is what they said. And so the treatment is, 1, you get on a diuretic. 2, you got to lose weight. And so me, I'm an active person. I'm not skinny, but I'm active. I got a mean sweet tooth. But I was like, okay, this is reasonable. And so I took the diuretic, and it definitely kept the pressure down. And most people, when they have it, they have symptoms of like migraines, intense headaches, blurred vision. Sometimes people actually lose their temporary blindness, all kind of stuff. I had no symptoms. If I wasn't one of the people in the pandemic who was like, I want glasses, and went and got an eye exam. And so I was coming for my annual eye exams at this point, and I would have never known about it. So anyway, let's make a long story short. Yeah, it was kind of scary when it happened because I didn't know what was happening. But once I did my research and learned what it was, I knew I was okay, and the diuretic would help. But I didn't know what would come of it. Like, would this really work? So every 3 months, I would go for an appointment. They would check my optic nerve, see how I was doing. And so for a while, it was getting better. And then it got to a kind of like a stagnant point where it wasn't really doing anything. But once it was getting better consistently, they switched me to a lesser version because the diuretic was kind of intense, especially if you're not drinking enough water, which, again, have a problem with that. So, speeding that up, what happened next? Oh, so when I got to like the stagnant point, it was like, okay, you got to start losing some weight. So like when it first happened, I probably lost 10 pounds. And since then, I've kind of been wavering between like 15 and 12 pounds. But it's not, like losing from when that was started, 15 to 12 pounds of weight loss altogether, which is not that much. I mean, it's a lot for my body probably, but for me, it was still ranging in the same area that I would typically weigh. So anyway, what happened next? Yeah, so I would go for my appointments, we would check, it would be kind of stagnant. It wasn't bad. You can kind of see it was still there, but it wasn't getting worse. And then it got significantly better from when I first had to go. So 2 years later, I had, 444. I had an appointment let me put my drink down. So I had to go, how do I want to do this? So yeah, here we are 2 years later. I had an appointment at the end of August, and the swelling is all gone, and I no longer have to take the medicine. Now, why are we telling this story, this long story? Because I don't know if it's attributed specifically to, um, so let me go back. After I was diagnosed, I started my herbalism program that next March. So December was the diagnosis, and I started my herbalism program in March. And so, of course, I'm learning different things, natural diuretics, all these other things. But I'm still taking my medicine because I wasn't, I didn't feel like I knew enough to just be like, okay, I'm gonna take this instead. So anyway, continued on that journey, and but I was still getting tested, having the follow-up appointments, and I was still having the issue, but I wasn't like diving deep into using the herbalism to treat it. And I never got to a point where I was solely using herbalism, but I started, incorporating certain herbs that I knew would be helpful. But I was mainly focused on these other areas of my herbal protocol, not necessarily IIH, but gut health, anxiety, stress. Those were the main things that my herbal protocol came focused on: self-worth, healing, and like emotional support. And so here I am 2 years later with consistent herbal practice. I will say consistent herbal practice. I was already drinking tea all the time anyway, we know that. But the other major shift I made, because I'm like, well, what's the difference? Because I went earlier this year and it was still slightly there, and then I just went, so that was like 3 or 4 months after, and I went again, and we're done with it. And so for me, I'm like, what's the difference? Like, I wasn't doing anything significantly different with the medicine. I wasn't doing, my herbal routine was actually not as intense as it had been before. Some of the herbs that I feel like really help that, I wasn't as active with. So I wasn't doing all the extra stuff that I felt like I needed to be doing, to be working on that, because I was so, I had a lot going on. But the one thing that definitely changed was leaving my job, quitting my job, and pursuing a whole new lifestyle. And focusing more on the business, like building up the business. But mainly, it wasn't even building up the business that I started focusing on. It was my general health, like sustaining myself through these transitions, because I knew I didn't want to be in this job anymore. I knew I was being called to move on. And so I was focused on kind of sustaining myself for a while. And then once I got past the point of like, okay, we made this decision, we made the shift, and I calmed down in that and I got comfortable in that, that's when I started focusing more on my body and my health. So getting more active again, just in general, like I remember telling my therapist, I don't feel anxiety the same way I used to. Like, it may come in a little bit, but it doesn't linger. Stress, things that are stressful don't weigh me down. And so it made me think about like what chronic stress does to our body. And some of the things that we're not willing to give up to release some of the chronic stress may be what helps us move through the dis-ease in our body, which ultimately results in disease, like, diagnosis. And so I just thought about like combining all of this together was really a lifestyle shift. It wasn't just one thing that did it. The medicine they gave me supported me, sustained me, helped me to be better, to feel better, for the symptoms. Well, I wasn't having symptoms, but the pressure to go down, but it was still there. Continuous herbalism, continuously incorporating herbs into my general day-to-day, that probably helped with some of the possible headaches that I wasn't getting, or any of the other symptoms. I don't know. I don't have a way to track that. But what I do know shifted from, the last time I had the appointment to this time was that I left my job that I wasn't really enjoying. It was a stressful environment. I don't think I knew I carried so much stress with it, but like being in this freedom now, I feel like a completely different person. So anyway, all that to say, sometimes it's not one thing, it's a bunch of little things. And what it results in is a need for a lifestyle. So when you think about like a herbal protocol, you're thinking about a lifestyle. You're not thinking about medicine to fix one thing. You're thinking about the whole person, the whole body, the spiritual body, the physical body. And so this journey was like coupled with a lot of spiritual work, a lot of mental work, and a whole system community to shift me into a new space. I had a therapist, I had a psychiatrist, I had a doctor for this thing, this IIH thing. I have my friends, my family. I have different people in the community that I've met that have supported this journey, this shift that I'm making. And so really, I think what I left was secluded, I think I left a disconnected lifestyle and moved into a connection with myself, connection with my genuine, authentic self, which ultimately connected me to spaces that I needed to be in, people that I needed to be in relationship with, and most importantly, spiritually, how I wanted to be in relationship with God. And yeah, I think all of those shifts attributed to, me being IH free, like, yeah, I don't have to take the medicine. The issue is not there. And so now I just have to maintain or lose more weight. But this turned into a lot longer video than I wanted it to. So maybe it's a YouTube video. I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to share that. Like if you're moving through something heavy or something intense or something that's like chronic and consistent that's going on with you, looking at it from a holistic standpoint and realizing how much chronic stress is so ingrained into the systems and the way that we do things, the way that we live life, and how important it is to identify where your chronic stress is coming from. Even if you've learned to manage it, you've learned to cope with it, you may not even notice it. But when something tells you to move, something tells you to shift, there's a reason for it. And I think mine was about this chronic stress that was living in my body, whether it was mine or somebody else's. If I'm in that environment, I'm soaking all of it in. And it's just been so normalized that you may not notice it. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share.